Now revisiting our top story, the downing of Malaysian Flight 17, and I'm joined by Jim Walsh now. He's an international security analyst and research associate at MIT. Jim, welcome to our broadcast.
Good to be with you.
Our reporter on the ground says the OSCE has been blocked, obviously. Russian separatists still in control of that area. How do you conduct an international investigation when the investigators can't get in?
Well, you can't, and my concern is that while outsiders, international experts are being kept from the scene, you have others who are on the scene that are probably busily trying to, remove equipment, remove anything they can. There's some people who may just be there, there were reports that people were taking souvenirs and that sort of thing. But there have been more important reports that the SA-11, the surface-to-air missile battery, crossed back over into Russia. My guess is that there are Russians on the ground, probably looking at the site, even as international observers do not have access. So I think it's a problem.
Okay. There are unconfirmed reports that the black boxes have already been removed from the site. How crucial in this type of investigation are those black boxes?
Well, I would say two things. One, there's some doubts cast about that report because the way the local rebels were describing it, they said they had 12 of 14 boxes, black boxes. Well, there are only 2 black boxes on an airplane of this kind, and they're orange in color. I think what was more disturbing to me are two things. One, they said that they would turn over these boxes, whatever they were, to the Russians, not to the Ukrainians, who are supposedly by international law in charge of this investigation, but they're going to give them to the Russians. And secondly, it certainly means that they are scouring the site, looking, disturbing the crime scene and trying to gather evidence when they are unqualified and certainly biased in that. So I think that's what's troubling about that report.
Okay, Jim, I don't know if you've seen it, but over the last hour or so, these phone conversations have been leaked from the Ukrainian side.
Yes.
And they're basically a back and forth with 2 people who are believed to be Russian separatists, talking about when they actually discovered that it was a civilian plane. What can investigators or what can the UN do with this phone call?
Well, I think this is a case where you have to also step back and look at the source. Ukraine is highly motivated to cast guilt upon the rebels. If this was coming from U.S. intelligence, from NATO intelligence, from some other group that doesn't really have a dog in this fight, then I would say that's interesting stuff. Since it's coming from Ukraine, it may be authentic, but I think you have to treat it skeptically given the source. That's just the nature of the conflict right now, is both sides are engaged in a propaganda campaign. So anything coming from Ukraine, I think you have to take with a grain of salt.
Okay, and last question. Clear up this part about flying in a restricted airspace, a war zone area. I mean, Malaysia Airlines was clearly granted a flight path to fly in this area, but then you have the other side saying, well, wait a minute, they're flying in a war zone.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to that last group. I mean, it wasn't only Malaysia Airlines. There were other airlines that day that had flights going through that corridor. But, I fly all the time. If there's a little bit of weather, they make my flight, go all the way around. Here you have a war zone. But more than that, you had on Monday a air transport being shot down at 20,000 feet. It seems to me that people would have been more cautious about that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jim Walsh, for your time and insight. We really appreciate it. We'll be right back.